So there was a huge protest in New York City over the weekend. It was called the Climate March in New York City. Over 50,000 people were present at this march. I couldn't believe my eyes myself. I participated in numerous marches and protests, and I've covered them as well. And aside from George Floyd, all of the other rallies, like I wish we had 50,000 people show up at those rallies. I wish we had 50,000 people show up at the anti-war rallies. I really do. But over 50,000 people showed up. Apparently, multiple different organizations put this rally together. We're going to get into some of the pros. We're going to get into some of the cons. Because apparently AOC was one of the speakers at this rally. And I have an update about that too, from someone who was a part of the organizing team to tell you about whether or not they wanted AOC to be there. So this is a whole thing that we're unraveling. But there were a number of people that were present. Cornel West was there. Susan Sarandon also spoke. Of course, Susan Sarandon, we'll get into that in a second, but I just want to say, like, she does not have to do any of this. Susan Sarandon is an actress. If she wants to, she can just kick back, just like most celebrities or actresses in Hollywood. But I think she lives in New York. She can just kick back and just live her lavish life. But she has been involved in multiple protests and rallies. She was a part of the Medicare for All marches we had in this country over 2 years ago. She's been arrested for protesting. So that's someone who really cares. Most of them don't. Let's keep it real. Most of them don't. But one of the speakers at this rally was Dr. Cornel West. I want to show you some of the speeches that happened. They're short. I think they had a limited amount of time. But we'll start off with the speech from Dr. West here, and then we'll get to some of the other appearances as well.
Be clear, let us not be deceived. We're here to fight organized greed. We want to end the fossil fuel industry. We want to end institutionalized indifference, and Rabbi Heschel is right. Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. So we're here to do what? Come together. People of faith. Bring our bodies, our hearts and minds together to make sure we send a message to the government. Both political parties need to know there's human beings in Cancer Alley. There's human beings who are victimized by Mountain Valley Project. There's human beings who are pipeline. There's human beings who are dealing with Willow Project.
So he's talking about the people that are affected because of the fossil fuel industry. Now, obviously, there's more to climate than just fossil fuels. We have to talk about the military industrial complex, which is the largest, most single polluter in the world. But these communities that have been just wrecked by the pipelines, we're talking about Line 3. We're talking about Standing Rock. We're talking about the people in Appalachia. We're talking about the Willow Project. There's indigenous communities there. And our government really does not care about these people. They don't care about poor, working class people. They damn sure don't care about indigenous people. They try to pretend like they don't exist. Flint, Michigan, same thing. Putting in these faulty pipelines, poisoning people with the water. That doesn't happen in Beverly Hills. Let's keep it real. That doesn't happen in these rich communities. That happens in poor, working class communities, and oftentimes communities of color. So we have to remember that. We have to remember they're poisoning the people.
And if there's one thing that brings us together as religious folk, because I come from a deep tradition that follows a Palestinian Jew named Jesus who ran out the money changers of the temple. That's why they put him on the cross, and he was killed by the Roman Empire. So we need to run out the fossil fuel profiteers out of what Martin Luther King Jr. called the world house. For what? To make sure that there's some air that we can breathe. To make sure that there's some communities that we can connect. And we understand it's not just fossil fuel. We're talking about a predatory capitalist processes that don't care about people, don't care about profits, and are obsessed with, don't care about people and are obsessed with profits. That's what I want to say. trying to talk fast because I got 2.5 minutes and I'm used to 2 hours. But the important thing is that we keep the love at the center of it. Oh, yes. When Martin Buber said I, thou versus I, it, we treat each other like thou. We treat the earth like a thou, not a it. We don't manipulate. We don't dominate. We don't subjugate. You don't squeeze every ounce just for profit, even when we relate to each other and when we relate to the earth. But we don't come in the spirit of self-righteousness. We come in the spirit of not just acknowledging climate emergency. It's worse than that. It is climate catastrophe. And I come from a blues people, and the blues is all about jazz, lyrically expressed and honestly confronted and artistically transfigured. Strange fruit is the blues, that's catastrophe. The problem of our politicians, they think ecological catastrophe is just a problem because they have managerial mentality, something that they can get their hands around and come up with some incremental response as if we're not living on the edge of the cliff. This is catastrophe. This is the blues all the way down. But we all are blues men and blues women because the response of catastrophe is to never allow it to have the last word. We have solidarity in the face of catastrophe. Let us march together. Let us fight together. Let us laugh together. Let us dance together. Let us smile together. Let us cry together. From our indigenous people all across the country and the world, yes, we will not allow the organized greed to have the last word. Love supreme or love supreme. It be clear.
Okay, so that was Dr. Cornel West's speech. And I also want to show you, because like I said, there were multiple speakers. Susan Sarandon was also a speaker there. Unfortunately, whoever got this, it was hard to find. They didn't get a long one with Susan Sarandon, but I do want to show you what I was able to find. So she's saying here, Biden in fossil fuels. And here we go.
Number one, as the largest oil and gas producer. We heard Obama brag about this, actually, about how much oil and gas he was producing, and accounts for 1/3 of all planned oil and gas expansions for the next few decades. Number one.
So that's something to remember there. What Susan Sarandon was just saying. Remember Obama, I forgot about that, but remember Barack Obama, he bragged about that, about how much oil was being produced. So that's why I told you, like, both parties are guilty of this when we talk about this. Now, we also have to remember, again, the indigenous communities, the ones that are being one of the groups that are being affected by the pipelines that have been happening in this country. So this gentleman here is indigenous, and I want you to hear what he had to say. He was at the rally as well.
Could you just tell me why you're here today?
Well, I'm here at the request of spiritual authorities within our indigenous network. They said that this United Nations Secretary General's Summit on Climate Ambition has no spiritual soul to it. That the world leaders have forgotten what the responsibility is to understand the sacredness of Mother Earth and Father Sky. So I'm here to defend that sacredness that we need to have talked about, that raises, that's a big quote. I got a big quote. And we're here to protect the rights of indigenous peoples. And we're here to resist the capitalization of the climate negotiations.
So this is something to remember. He said we're here to protect the rights of indigenous people. Isn't it crazy that in 2023, indigenous people still have to fight for their rights in this country? They're the people who are indigenous to the land. And they have to fight for rights in a country that was theirs. Still to this day. And now their communities are being poisoned.
Carbon market systems. And also the false promises being made with the experimentation of geoengineering technologies such as carbon capture and storage. And we're here to renew not only our relationship but humanity's relationship to building sustainable communities based upon regenerative economy, living economy, not a fossil fuel economy. So that's my long quote.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jay. Remember Standing Rock. Exactly. Exactly. I remember protesters, indigenous protesters being, hit with those little the pellet guns. They were hitting them. The police were doing that. It's their land. And this is something we have to remember. Now, there has been criticism, of course. Can't have a rally without criticism. But one of the biggest critiques is the fact that AOC spoke at this rally. Now, we're going to get into the hypocrisy in reference to AOC being there. I personally don't think she should have spoken at that rally. I'll get into that in just a second. But she was there. Jamal Bowman was also there as well. We'll get into a little bit of the speech that she gave here and why people are crying, send her home, so to speak. Some people were not liking this.
That we organize out of hope. We organize out of commitment. We organize out of love. We organize out of the beauty of our future. And we will not give up. We will not let go. We will not allow cynicism to prevail. We will not allow our visions of a collaborative economy, of dignity for working people, of honoring the black, brown, indigenous, white working class. We will not give up. That we organize.
But you did give up. Listen to this.
Out of hope. We organize out of commitment. We organize out of love. We organize out of the beauty of our future. And we will not give up. We will not let go. We will not allow cynicism to prevail. We will not allow our visions of a collaborative economy, of dignity for working people, of honoring the black, brown, indigenous, white working class. We will not give up.
But she already did give up. She gave up when she endorsed Joe Biden. Joe Biden approved the Willow Project. Marianne doesn't approve the Willow Project. Cornel West doesn't approve the Willow Project. I'm not sure about RFK Jr., but knowing how he feels about the environment, he probably wouldn't approve of that. Do you see the problem? So it's great to get up there and grandstand and make these great speeches, but your actions mean more. And so you are endorsing and telling people to vote for the very person who does not support any of this, who lied to the American people, who lied to voters, who lied to particularly the Gen Z voters, and said that there will be no more drilling. No more drilling. So there's the endorsement. And then there's the way that she's voted in reference to legislation. Thank you so much for this, Benigma. Benigma says AOC voted for increased drilling on federal land. She's totally full of shit. This is why it's important that you follow how they move when it comes to legislation. How are they voting? Because anyone can give up there and give a speech. People can say a lot. Get them in front of a crowd. We can go up there and make it look real good. But what are you doing behind closed doors when it's time for you to vote? When it's time for you to endorse certain candidates that are against these very same things that you say are so important and critical to the American people? So a lot of people took issue with it. And people were like, why would they ask AOC to speak? But did they? This is coming from Christina. This is Christina for New Jersey. I believe Christina, I can go to her thing in a second, but I don't think she's Democrat or Republican. I think she's either independent or Green Party. Christina said AOC crashed our protest. We never wanted her there. They turned it from fossil fuel into a grift. So let me see who Christina, let me go just to make sure. Yeah, she's running third party. I thought so. I was just double checking just to make sure. She turned it into a grift, right? So Blue Moon comes here and says, lies, you cannot crash in such an elaborate manner. All the well-meaning Greens need to take a hard look at themselves as controlled opposition right now. Christina goes on to say, my point is that I left. It turned into a grift, not truly about fossil fuel. Hey, if you want to host a protest, I'll come support you. Lucy goes on to say, if you'd like to protest a town hall, and I think that's Jose. Isn't that Jose's name? Yeah, that's Jose. We'll train you. And then Christina says, how about one better? I'll host a town hall. Lucy said, no offense, but no thanks. It's useless to have people that don't even understand the basics of infiltration leading any town hall. Ridiculous. Green Party leadership has outed itself. Now, I will add again, this event was hosted by multiple organizations. It wasn't just one organization that hosted this event. I'll get into that in just a second. And then she shared here where Christina said, we have someone fighting on the right side and people are focused on the wrong things. Leave Peter alone, let him manage. She was talking about Peter Dow. And then she says, I do want to add, I'll be leading a lot of town halls. Lucy said, then consider that the entire End Fossil Fuel platform is a pro-Ukraine position, a dead end. And then she shared this here, fossil fuel financing and the Russia-Ukraine war. So I have been to multiple rallies. Sometimes people do just show up and they'll speak. Like, for example, when I was a speaker at the Assange rally last October in DC, I remember Medea Benjamin, she was there. She wasn't announced as one of the speakers, so she wasn't on the list, but she showed up and she asked to speak. And so they let her give a speech. But my thing is, I felt like it was really hypocritical for AOC to speak there. That's my thing. And also, it wasn't just her. Jamal Bowman was also there speaking. I think I had a clip of him too. I lost that clip, but Jamal Bowman was also there speaking as well. So the thing is this. When people see that there are Democrats, particularly the ones who sold us out, like squad members, and they come to these events and they speak. That's the thing. There's a difference between showing up and speaking. And they speak. Then it will give people the impression that once again, this has been co-opted by the Democratic Party. Just a matter of the situation. Because when I go to these like the Assange events and all that kind of stuff, none of those people, they're not speakers. They're not present. So that's the thing. And there's more to add as well. There was also another protest. Now, I don't know if everyone saw this. This is also in reference to the climate issue in New York City at the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't blame them for protesting the Federal Reserve. Anybody can show up and say, look, shut it down. Okay. I don't blame them for this. I want to show this video clip here because they did start to arrest protesters that protested in front of the Federal Reserve. So they did arrest people. I believe, if I remember correctly, the Fed was shut down because they had blocked the entrance to it, basically. But one thing I will say is this as well. I understand this issue with fossil fuels, but if you're going to do a private protest as well, I also think it's important to mention the military-industrial complex, right? So it's also, instead of just signs that say stop fossil fuels, there should have been signs that said stop these damn wars, right? But I think there's a reason for that as well that I want to get into. Oh, I'll show you another video of the Fed so you can see this as well, of the entrance. Here we go here. So this is part of the entrance we usually. So they're saying no oil, no gas, fossil fuels can kiss my ass. But also, you should also mention the military industrial complex. This is the piece that's missing. And I've seen this from other climate activists as well, particularly here in Massachusetts. You know, some people can be a little earthy and really into these types of issues. But the moment you bring up the military industrial complex, they just kind of look at you with the side eye like, huh? You know, you're a climate activist. How are you a climate activist and you don't understand the danger of the military industrial complex when we talk about the methane, the CO2 that's released in the atmosphere, not just from the wars itself and combat, but also from military vehicles like the tanks? What's up, Ryan? DOD used 12.6 million gallons of fuel per day. Thank you, Ryan. So that was something I noticed here, you know, but the earthy people, they just kind of look at me like, what? Now, there was something else, because a lot of times when these things happen, we want to know, where does the money come from, right? One of the organizations, New York Communities for Change. I don't know about the other organizations, but we do have information on this one about their funding. Now, this is problematic. Now, Big Mad Crab actually shared this. New York Communities for Change is funded by billionaire fossil fuel stock owning NGOs like Center for Popular Democracy, 1630 Fund, Working's Family Party, etc. So all of this is literally performative theater. They're perfectly fine accepting millions from fossil fuels. Let's pull this up. So you'll see here, this is Schedule 1, Form 990, 2021. And I can't, unfortunately, they don't let you zoom. Okay, there we go. I can zoom it that way. Based. And then you'll see where's the money coming from, right? So here's the money, 10,000, 62,000. And then we'll scroll down there in alpha order. So you can see some of the organizations: ACC Action, CASA in Action, Center for Coal Field Fusion Partnership, Inc., Delaware Alliance for Community and Advancement. Whoops, scroll too far. Living United for Change in Arizona, Make the Road Action in Connecticut, Make the Road Action in Nevada. There's also Make the Road Pennsylvania, etc. I just want to go to a couple more here. Rights and Democracy Project, Public Accountability and Initiative. See, these are 501c3s. This is what I was saying before about some of these nonprofits. Like, you really have to look at these organizations and see where the money is coming from. And there's a lot. Tides Foundation, West Virginia Citizen Action Education Fund. There's Working Families Organization, Center for Popular Democracy, Inc. Now, these are the big money ones, right? Working Families donated $122,000, and Center for Popular Democracy, $300,000. You always want to look at the big donors first, I would say. But again, like, billionaire funded, fossil fuel stock owning NGOs. So this is why I was trying to tell people before to follow the money. I mean, what really is, what's the goal? What's the agenda? Now, does everybody who go to these rallies, do they know that? No, most people don't. Most people don't stop and look up and see, oh, all these organizations are present. Who are they all funded by? No, most people do not do that. Most of the organizations that are participating are not going to do that either. Most people just show up for the cause. So what we have seen, and we can go to the second type VNC, Eric, what we have seen over time is that billionaire funding has infiltrated even the most progressive movements that are out there, whether it's been independent media or it has been some type of political action on the ground or grassroots organization. Sunrise Movement was also present at this event as well. And I've told you before that they've taken billionaire money before. So I think the thing is that a lot of times these organizations start out in good faith and they want to exist just by grassroots funding. But as time goes by, they realize they're not raising enough money quickly. In comes billionaire. Let me offer money to help your organization. It's for a good cause. And the organization won't think twice about taking that money because they're like, we need the money. we have to be very careful with these types of issues, because if I see a rally and I wasn't there, I haven't seen all the video footage. I think it's great that over 50,000 people showed up. Hell, I'd love to have 50,000 people show up at a rally. But who are the people? Where's the money coming from? What's the real agenda? Where were the anti-war signs? Where was stop the military industrial complex signs in reference to pollution and the environment and climate? Something we got to think about. Let's go to some of these comments. Man. Thank you, Sparky. Great work, beautiful. Sabby comes through with a great show again. Thank you. Catherine says Susan Sarandon is a true person of principle. Thank you. Austin says hemp can replace fossil fuels. I've heard about that. Thank you, Sparky. One of my brothers knew Ambassador Stevens. Before Stevens was murdered, my brother remarked to me that Stevens was passionate about helping African unity. It's likely why he wasn't rescued. That's interesting. Thank you, George. Libya is Iraq, Chile, Guatemala, Syria, Ukraine, Taiwan. Biden is Bush, Clinton, Reagan, Trump. Now go and vote for your preferred flavor of duopoly. Well said there, George. Thank you, Dana, for the $100. Dana says, thank you. Thank you, Dana. Is that a candy cane? I think there's a candy cane in that picture. Thank you, Natalie. Standing Rock is in trouble again. Check it out. Okay, I'll have to do that. Actually, I think I got an email from someone telling me something else was happening in North Dakota. I got to check. Thank you, Alex. AOC is a fraud. Thanks, Alex. Alex, are you in the desert in that picture? Thank you, Gala. AOC is a failed actress with social media addiction. It's like watching a bad audition. LOL. JB said, Sabs, remember at the March for Medicare for All when Cori Bush came to Washington, D.C., marched and gave an impromptu speech? Something similar there. That is another good example. So that was another thing when we had the marches for Medicare for All. Cori Bush was the only one that did show up. I will say that. But then she also told the banksters, she also told people that she didn't like what we were doing, that they didn't approve of us doing those marches. But she showed up, gave the impromptu. Thank you, JB. Thanks for the reminder. I'm going to pull up this poll to see what you guys thought about AOC here in reference to, thank you, Eric, in reference to whether or not she should have attended. 1,282 votes. Do you agree with AOC attending the climate protests? 8% said yes. 44% said no. 7% said, I'm not sure. And 40% said, don't care one way or the other. And by the way, I appreciate the people who say that they're not sure, because sometimes people aren't willing to admit that. So I understand, but I definitely appreciate that. So thank you for being honest with me.